Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Carry On, brought to you by Nation's Finest, where our mission is to support America's military veterans and their families with a comprehensive approach to housing, health, and employment that helps them to achieve self sufficiency and reach their full potential. If you or a veteran you know needs help, or if you'd like to make a donation, please visit nationsfinest.org or call 833 468 9676. Again, that's nationsfinest.org or 833 468 9676. I'm your host, Mark Miller, Army veteran and communications director for Nation's Finest. Our guest today is a name and face you may recognize. Vincent Rocco Vargas is a Hollywood actor, writer, and veteran advocate. He's known for his roles in Mayans MC, Brothers in Arms, and Lucy Shimmers and the Prince of Peace. Vince is a veteran as well, having served 3 combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan with the 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. He just recently retired from the Army after many years of combined active and guard service. While he continues his film career, he's also focused on helping fellow veterans, having started the nonprofit Veteran and hosting the Vinny Rock podcast, regularly interviewing veterans whom he refers to as cool veterans who do cool shit. Vince Vargas, thank you so much for joining us here today on Carry On.
Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate you taking the time. For those who have seen you speak publicly before, you speak about military transition and the experience you had in the military and leaving that part of your life behind you. And we often talk with veterans and our clients about using their skills from the military to be successful in civilian life. But this is the other side we don't talk about as much is which parts of the military do you need to kind of work on letting go of?
Yeah. I think there's this, sometimes people hold on to their past experiences and kind of like, I guess that's what they identify with. And if you identify with, like, say me, I was an Army Ranger and that's all I identified with. It's very hard to allow yourself to assimilate to the civilian culture and start to become something new. Our community kind of gets hung up on, I was an infantryman instead of, I used to be an infantryman, but the skills I learned as an infantryman, I can adapt and use those in civilian culture and find same success, or like leadership skills or punctuality, all these different things, neatness, dress, care of equipment, a lot of the ideologies that the military gave us. But for some reason, sometimes guys get hung up on wanting to wear that, combat badge around their chest and hoping that that's going to carry them far in life. And the reality of it, the big picture, people might appreciate your service, but your service to yourself and your family aren't done once the military is over.
I think that's great advice that, learn from what we did, take that experience, but what got you here isn't going to get you there to that next step.
Right.
So self-destructive behavior can often occur when veterans struggle with that process that you just talked about, struggle of, leaving what we need to leave behind us and looking forward. So that's all very real. That's reality. But if we can step into fiction for a moment, in the show The Mayans, the character Coco, played by Richard Cabral, he's a veteran consumed by drug addiction. And I hope I don't have this wrong. I was a big fan of Mayans, but haven't watched it in a while. But if I remember correctly, your character, Rocco, struggled between supporting his brother, struggled with some enabling behavior, trying to cover up what his buddy was doing so he didn't get kicked out of the club, and then eventually struggled with loyalty to his brother versus loyalty to the club and saying it was time for him to go. So not getting into too much of the plot line of Mayans, which, by the way, everyone go out there and watch it. Great show. Do you see parallels between that fictional relationship between your character and Rocco and the relationships you see with struggling veterans in real life and those who need help and kind of that difficult line to walk and how to encourage them to get help?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think that's what we intended on the show is the camaraderie between Coco and Gilly, my character on my ends. Um, they are supposed to have that camaraderie that we know and are so familiar with in the military, and that's why there's this kind of struggle between what's more valuable, the brotherhood of your closest friend or the brotherhood of the unit itself, right? And the unit being Mayans MC. And that is very common to me going and hanging out with my ranger buddies and see my ranger buddy maybe making a fool of himself or doing something stupid. Where do I step in and say, hey man, you're embarrassing yourself, but as well as our unit? Or do I just kind of back them up and continue to allow them to be a fool of them, make a fool of themselves? And so I think the show does a really good job of really portraying that. And I think there's something so honest about that. There was a baseball coach who once told me, no one's bigger than the club. And that means that there is no name or person who is so good and their status is so important that it's more important than the club itself, right? No, the team itself. And so that's the same as I believe the Ranger Battalion feels very similar to that in the Army as a whole. There's not one person who is greater than the whole branch of the Army. And so when making those decisions, it might be hard because you want to side with your partner to the left and to the right of you, but what's the best decision for the overall mission? And so that's what Gilly's character is really trying to figure out. And you see him going in and out of what's the right decision to make and the conflict of that. And I think it's a very honest gesture that any of us day to day would struggle with, is enabling our own friends. And when is it time to stop enabling and actually start pushing them towards getting the help for the great of the mission, right? The big picture.
Great point. It is a hard line to walk because those people we care about, those close to us, we don't want them to get in trouble. We don't want them to lose their job or get kicked out of the club, whatever that is.
Right. Or lose our friendship, right? Like they might not understand what we're trying to do.
Right. So do we cause them damage by bringing what their issues are to light, or do we help them in the long run? That it's a difficult line to walk, and one that has to be done with a great deal of balance.
Yeah, I agree, and I think sometimes you have to be the one to not be the enabler, but just to be very direct and honest and say, "Here's the truth: you're screwing up. You either get help, or I can't sit here and watch you burn your whole house down." Right? You know what I mean? Like one of us has to be the one to say that.
And if you're the one thinking clearly at that period, because all of us
Right.
all of us have a time when we haven't been thinking clearly.
Right.
But if you're the one clear-headed at that period, yeah, you're the one that has to make that call. Your friend struggling with addiction or going down a wrong path might not see as clearly.
Yep. I agree.
So, and my apologies for getting your character of Gilly and the character Rocco screwed up. I honestly am a fan. I wasn't lying to you.
No, it's all good. I think that's something that happens quite a bit, is the confusion of the nickname Rocco. Even in Hollywood, there was a director that said, "Who's Rocco?" Like, Vince. "Who's Gilly?" Vince. Where did Rocco come from? It's like, yeah, that's his nickname.
your nickname versus your name on the show. That's exactly
Right.
the line I went down. So at least I'm in good company with your
Yeah.
director there. You can tell him that. So, we talk about that difficulty, getting our friends on the right track, getting ourselves on the right track. Yet suicide continues to be an issue that plagues both the active duty military and military veterans like us. So getting help can sometimes be difficult given the level of discipline and self-sufficiency we were expected to exhibit as soldiers. Uh, Fort Benning, not a place that you're unfamiliar with, and that's where I went through basic training. And I remember there from your entry into the military, basic training, you were admonished for going to sick call. You were admonished for being an individual. It was suck it up, be disciplined. I even remember standing in line in the chow hall one day, and a soldier started coughing, and the company commander appeared out of nowhere and said, "Are you going to cough in the presence of the enemy and give away your position? Stop coughing." And man, when that's the mentality you're brought in with, and then we're dealing with issues like mental health later in life, how do you explain, given your own experience, that seeking help for mental health is not a sign of weakness. It's not, it's not being weak and not being able to suck up something as simple as a cold or my
Yeah.
ankle hurts. You're sucking up something much larger at this point. How do you draw that line, and what do you tell veterans who might be avoiding seeking help because of that appearance of weakness?
Yeah, well, I'm going to address this from two parts. First, active duty definitely needs to change its mindsets on how they train and lead and mentor their youth. We are inundated in this culture where they believe a tough guy is a guy that doesn't say he needs help, and that's absolutely incorrect. And you're raising men who are too afraid to say, "Hey, they're feeling a type of way towards whatever experience they've had." I think most of the drill sergeants I had in basic training never even seen combat. We're a whole different era of military that sees combat often or saw combat often for almost 20 years. And so that needs to be addressed, that the way we raised our youth didn't have to be this, you had to be this tough guy macho. It's like you had to be good at your job, but you also had to know here's some honest things and some of the repercussions of doing our job, what happens. And so first of all, I would change how the culture from the inside, from active duty completely. We're raising a drinking culture. We're raising you're tough. If you're struggling, you drink. If you're partying, if you're excited, you celebrate by drinking. And that in itself is one of the biggest issues we have, and why the suicide rates are so high. Is go check out the studies. Almost every single individual who's committed suicide was drinking at some point, right? It's this really crazy thing. It's like, why is that? Well, you have 22-year-old staff sergeants who've been to combat multiple times telling their young, impressionable youth who has no identity before this, right? They were 18, 17 years old when they joined, and they're looking up to their father figure saying, "Hey, it's cool to drink. It's what we do. If you're a ranger, you drink," right? And that mentality needs to stop, right? We need to think about, we're raising these youth that like we're raising our kids, and I would never raise my kids to be alcoholics, right? And so I'm guilty of this as well, because I was raised that way and I believed it was the right way to do it. And I would change everything if I can go back. And that being said, is what I would tell veterans is check the drinking, because that becomes one of the biggest issues we have in our community, from DUIs to drinking related domestic violence issues to post-traumatic stress issues to suicide. All of it, almost all of it, is rooted in some kind of drinking scenario. And so I would check that. And most guys who listen to this right now who aren't in a place to hear that are probably shutting us off now, and I apologize. But the truth is, we need to look in the mirror and realize a lot of the situations we put ourselves that are uncomfortable, that are make life stressful, is because we've put ourselves there by making bad choices, right? And so all of you who struggle have to know that it is okay to need help, right? It's okay to identify maybe you're addicted. Maybe you realize that you can't go a week without drinking because this is what you've grown accustomed to. That's my world was. I'm sober now because I identified that night that every decision I made was revolved around alcohol. And so, look at there's a lot of guys with a lot of experience, but take it from me, as second and 75th Ranger Regiment infantry dude, 3 combat deployments. Like I was surrounded by some of the toughest men, and the good majority of us needed counseling after everything you experienced, and just life. I mean, just life in itself. So I recommend it.
Very good points, and great parallel between the drinking culture on active duty and what we see with veterans. You're absolutely right. Cases of suicide and all these other problems often very linked to alcohol or other drug addictions trying to numb that pain.
Yeah.
What you just said about the 75th Ranger Regiment, a lot of you guys needing counseling after tours in Iraq and Afghanistan that you did over there, and I look at that, maybe it's my own veteran perspective seeing this, but I look at that very much like, hey, when I hear that guys in the NFL have to see doctors every week, I think nothing of that. They get banged up, they're
Yeah.
playing a rough sport. Deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan and doing everything that that we did as veterans, and specifically, guys like in the Ranger Regiment, what you did, uh, needing some counseling after that doesn't even seem odd to me. It seems like an NFL player going to see a doctor for a busted up knee. Like
Yeah.
I don't know why we stigmatize that, and I think it's great that we're talking about it. You're saying that stigma shouldn't be there at all.
Not at all. I think we're foolish and ignorant to think that we're so tough that we can handle it day to day. There's guys that can't even handle divorce. And it's like, why? It's like, because it's uncomfortable. It's hard, right? And you could speak to someone about it and they'll explain to you that it's part of the process is grieving even a marriage, right? The death of a marriage, and grieving a death of a brother or sister can take many years, and everyone goes through their own transition of that. And so I just think it's weird that it's uncomfortable for some people to talk about, but I also understand we were raised in a world where, like you said, you go to sick call, like, oh, you wear the scarlet letter for the rest of your career.
Right. You're not missing that battalion run. I don't care what's
Yeah.
wrong with you.
Right. I
Exactly.
had an arm. I injured my arm in Ranger school. It was I had brachial plexus nerve damage, which is essentially, they call it rucksack palsy, a rucksack, malnutrition, all the other things, reasons in Ranger school. But this arm was dead for over a year. But I remember
Oh my gosh.
they were fighting with the battalion PA to send me to Iraq anyways. And I was like, cool, let's go. I packed up, right? Because last thing I wanted to make an excuse, like, I'm going, let's go. And the day of the flight, the PA shut it down. He said, there's no point. What's he going to do? His arm doesn't work, right? The whole arm was dead. It was a really interesting thing. But I remember feeling like, oh man, you know how many people are going to give me shit, excuse my language, going to give me crap for that, right? They're going to give me so much crap because my arm doesn't work. Like, literally the thing don't work. But my fear of the backlash of not showing up on a deployment, and I couldn't even imagine, like, I don't even know what I'd do. I'd be a water boy essentially, because the arm doesn't work. I'd just be there in support. It was just an interesting time. And I remember the struggle of that, and knowing that, oh, I'm sure people are going to talk smack because I couldn't make the deployment.
And what I'm hearing from you is you were more concerned about making that deployment as opposed to whether or not your arm was going to ever work
Yeah,
again.
I didn't care about the arm. I was more scared of, like, man, if I miss the deployment, my NCO is going to be so pissed at me, and like I would love to find a job I can do out there with one arm. Like, I don't know what that is. Just hand me a grenades and I'll throw them. I guess I don't know, but that's the kind of person you are in Ranger Battalion, though. You want to go towards the enemy. You're raised that way. You believe in it. Wholeheartedly. I would have gone over there with one arm and done the mission as best I could too. But I remember the fear. I didn't care about the arm. I was more in fear of letting down my brothers in combat.
And I think that goes right along with what you were just saying. More worried about the team, more worried about the larger than yourself, and that we have to kind of learn how to transition into, okay, I do have to take some time and be worried about me now.
Yeah. Self aid, buddy aid, right? Self aid first.
That's right. So you said that injury occurred in Ranger School?
Yes.
So let's go down that road for a minute. In Ranger School, correct me if I'm wrong. Not an experience I ever had. If I'm not mistaken, more people wash out of Ranger School than graduate. Is that correct?
Oh, that's 100% correct. Yeah, I think it's like a 75% attrition rate, something like that.
Okay, so roughly a quarter of the folks that go in there graduate.
Correct.
Now, that's unique to military training because most military training is set up to graduate most, if not all, of the people who go through. So you've had some experience in going through some very difficult training and coming out as a graduate, but I'm sure you have peers to your left and right throughout your career, maybe not in the Ranger Regiment, but peers throughout your career that didn't make it through that and still continued moving on. And
Right.
where I'm going with this is that you've talked before publicly about improving yourself and learning and living life for those who can't.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean taking risks and going out there and doing things that maybe you'll be successful, maybe you won't, but that courage to learn, improve, try new things in life. Could you talk a little bit about that and how that works into your mentality of respecting those no longer with us in the way you live your life?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is kind of multiple parts. I think originally, when I got out of the military, I felt really kind of the fear of missing out. I felt a lot of survivor's guilt. And because I was in this kind of drinking world, I felt like my my duty was to drink in remembrance of my brothers who've fallen. And if I didn't drink hard enough, I didn't love them enough. And so this this mentality is very common. A lot of us do it. It's like, see how drunk I can get and blacked out drunk. That just shows, how much I love them, because that's how much it affects me. So, and I'm going to drink because they drank, and I'm going to drink their drink of choice, and I'm going to, feel sorry for myself. And that went on for many years. And having kids, my goal is always to kind of give them more opportunity, and be as successful as I could. And as I'm going through these phases of growing and learning to be a better father, and working on trying to be a better civilian, I realized like that mindset was slowing me down. That mindset was actually, it's like if I take 10 steps forward, I start taking the 5 steps back because of the same mentality, right? You get in trouble, you find yourself in bad positions, like all these things. And so at some point I finally shifted the mindset of like, well, let me see how successful I can get. Like, let me see all the things I can accomplish, because in my head, maybe they'd be more proud of me that way. I'm not sure what it was, but I thought about, like, if you believe in God or not, if there's a heaven, they're looking down at you and they see you drunk. I don't think they're cheering you on and saying, yeah, drink one more. I imagine it's like, dude, if I had life, I would want to enjoy it in a way where, let's see how much I can get done. Right. And in that mindset, I just wanted to kind of, well, let me kind of live my life for them. Let me see how much I could accomplish, and when I went into the Border Patrol, my first big career outside of active duty, I was a prison guard first, and then I went to Border Patrol. The goal was John Barraza, one of the gentlemen who passed away in Ranger Battalion, that really had an impact on my life. He was the one who told me he wanted to be a Border Patrol agent. And so for me, I was kind of like, oh, sorry about that, my dogs. But he was the one that kind of pushed me to go to the Border Patrol and try and live his life, and make him proud. And I did that for about 7 years, and decided maybe it was time for me to start doing what I wanted, and that's kind of what transitioned me into Hollywood. And it really was that pivot of mindset. Was, instead of feeling sorry for myself, instead of, drinking in their memory, I thought, well, let me see how much success I can have. And I imagine like how much more appreciative their families, their wives, their kids would feel if they see how successful one of their father's friends have been, because of their memory, because of their dad's memory. And so that's been my goal, and that'll continue to be my goal. I plan to try and conquer the world with this mindset. And the more that I accomplish, I pay tribute to them.
That's beautiful. And I think you're not only, my personal take, you're not only doing an honor to their memory, you're inspiring other veterans to honor ourselves and the memory of our brothers and sisters. So I think, like you said, taking this message to the world, I appreciate you sharing it with us here today. In that spirit, we've talked about a lot today. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our veteran audience that you'd like to leave them with today? Pearls of wisdom, or just advice that you think could help our fellow veterans out there?
Yeah, I write a lot, and when I write, and just recently I came up with this concept in my head that keeps kind of eating at me. It's called you versus you, right? And I say that, obviously I have a organization that is slowly growing called Veteran, and then that mindset is growing veterans in a positive way, like always improving the veteran culture, and even if it's one veteran at a time. And this you versus you concept is, I want you guys to think about this. Every day it is you versus you. It's the you version that's gonna take accountability for their actions and make smart choices, or it's the you that's going to make excuses, right? And if people, I'm trying to dig down to the root of, like, if you want to be successful, you have to be accountable, right? You have to be disciplined and accountable, meaning you have to identify your faults, you got to identify where your shortcomings are, and you have to adjust those, you have to shift those, right? Shift fire. And once you're able to shift fire on that, then you can actually start finding some improvements in life. So if there's financial issues, identify where that comes from. If there's physical fitness issues, where does that come from? And this continues. I evaluate my life daily to try and see where I'm falling short and where can I improve, and I continue to do that. And the person now right here in the screen is not the same guy you knew 1 year ago. I'm completely grow every single year. And my goal is to hopefully give that same mindset back to you veterans, to say, look at me, Vince Vargas. I am nothing special. There's no There's nothing like that is special, superhuman, nothing. There's nothing. I am just a dude who's motivated, who takes accountability for all his little mistakes and does everything he can to adjust fire, shift fire, and continue moving forward. And I'm trying to gain ground daily in a positive way. And I would tell all of you, if there's a drinking issue, fix it. I've been sober now just under 3 years because I didn't need that anymore. That slowed me down. I write every day because that's my version of meditation and healing and self accountability. I kind of evaluate my life through that. I do these things all the time to kind of do checks and balances. It's our own PCIs and PCCs on our own lives currently. And if you can do that and you can be accountable for your actions, the you that's accountable will win. If you can't be accountable for your actions and you continue to make excuses, the you that has excuses will win. And you need to make the one that has accountability win more often, and you'll be successful in life. Plain and simple.
That's beautiful advice. Discipline, accountability, taking those evaluations. What do I need to improve? Taking those steps forward to self-improvement. Only time on this podcast that I'm going to disagree with you. You say you're nothing special, but you are. You are, because you did a lot for this nation. Thank you for your service. You're doing a lot still by stepping up, helping fellow veterans, sharing your story, guiding people to the self-improvement and the better life that you're living. So that's the only thing I'm going to call you out on. You are special, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I really appreciate you being here with us today, sharing your thoughts, your insights, and your advice. And really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate. Thank you so much, man.
Have a great day.
Yes, sir.
And thank you to all of you who joined us today. We'll be back next week discussing issues relevant to veterans and those who care about them. If you enjoyed today's podcast and you want to hear more, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to get your podcasts by searching Carry On by Nation's Finest, or you can find the links on our social media. Thank you again for joining us today, and as always, carry on.